This is Clay Lamb, and I'm on the phone here with Greg Polakow. They've been in the chimney and fireplace industry for lots and lots of years. Greg brings some really good information. Stay tuned to the end of the show because he's talking about an interesting, message I want to share with you. Well, welcome to Home Contractors HQ. I'm on the phone here with my buddy, Greg Polakow. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm fabulous. Always nice to talk to you.
Well, you bring so much insight. You know, it's only been about 4 months since I spoke to you last, and I thought, since I'm starting this business building series, who else would I start off with? Greg, the professor, the teacher, the coach.
So in other words, nobody else was available.
No. No, you have a lot of great insights. And just so our home contractors know what we're doing here, we're starting a new series called Business Building Series, and it's just designed to help new contractors launch on to great ideas from other contractors, coaches, and educators that can really help them get to the next level of growing their business. You ready to do this, my friend?
I am.
Just so everybody knows, I sent Greg a few questions, and I asked him if you'd take a look at them. We're going to talk about things people wish they would have done prior to starting your business. I guess we're going to talk a little bit about leadership, delegation, team building. We'll probably throw some sales in there. How's that? You like that?
Sounds great.
And employee training. So let me ask you, Greg, you've been doing this how many years? You've been in the business?
What century is it now? It's been a long time. I would say altogether maybe 15 years, something like that.
15 years.
But I've been in the education business a lot longer than that.
Well, just so everybody knows, you're a Harvard grad and you know what's going on. You got a master's degree, and that's not just something to brag about. That's really a great insight to help other people know that you come from a serious professional background of teaching. And that's why I wanted to set the stage here, Greg. Let's do this. You know, after all your years in the industry and manufacturing and distribution and now coaching, what do you think were some of the things that contractors wish they would have known before they launched into their business?
You know, I think they wish they would have known all the things that almost anybody wishes they had known when they launch into a business. And that is, all of the little pitfalls in business when you don't do things right, the issues involving just managing your finances. But even bigger than that, for somebody like a contractor who may be used to working by himself, learning to deal with employees, to manage them, to train them, to inspire them is a huge thing. And I think most people going into business are totally unprepared for that.
What do you mean unprepared? Let's say they've worked for a contractor for maybe 4 or 5 years. They say, he's making all the money, now I'm ready to go out. What do you think they're missing?
They've never been responsible for supervising other people. They've never been responsible, in most cases, I won't say in every case, for working with people in such a way that it's an inspiration for those people, it teaches those people, it raises those people to the highest level of performance. That's what they're missing. Well,
I think you're right there, Greg, because I think a lot of times you think as you're done your job, you see the guy make the big checks and you're doing all the sweat back-breaking hard work, and he's taking the check home. You forget some of the costs of doing business, some of the costs of staying up at night when your wife goes to bed and you're trying to think, doggone, I got to finish this quote. I got to figure out what else to do. I got to run some numbers here. I got to get all my receipts out of my truck glove box and figure out how to file them for my bookkeeper. There's a lot of little nuances a lot of people forget.
There are. There's a huge weight of responsibility when you go into business for yourself, because in the old days when you worked for somebody else, they took care of all those things. They managed all those details, and you never even saw the details.
Yeah, you don't see those late nights and those early mornings and customers that don't want to pay, and there's a lot of thinking has to go into it. I wish I would have known a few things before I started. I did not know how to really watch the numbers as well as I should. I was busy being a craftsman and trying to learn a few things of running a business. I had a marketing degree, but I really didn't think and understand how to build a business. And that's what this whole business building seminar is about. I want to jump into your next question here, Greg. I guess I want to say this. To run a business yourself is one thing, and there's still some disciplines about that a lot of guys miss. They're responsible to get this thing done and get back to that customer. But as you become a leader and want to grow your business, let's talk first about leadership, then next level. What about delegation? How to start in that path?
Well, these are key topics, and they're key topics because most people don't know what the difference is between being a boss and being a leader. And here's a quick definition. Nobody likes bosses. Everybody likes leaders. So you really want to be a leader.
I guess we can just pack this podcast in. It's all done now, huh?
Well, that is the key thing, because leaders don't scold people. Leaders don't put people down. Leaders build people up. Leaders inspire people. Leaders provide an example. Leaders are out in front. Leaders are teachers. And those are the kind of people that develop employees that love their job and look forward to going to work every day and know how to operate perfectly. That's what you need, is that kind of leadership. And nobody teaches that. That's, if you don't have that naturally, and most of us don't, then you need to learn the principles. And part of that is, and this is a big important thing, when you're the guy that starts the business and you're used to doing everything yourself, learning to delegate tasks to people you hire is a huge barrier to overcome, because most people are very reluctant to do that, and yet it's absolutely essential to do.
I remember a long time ago, a friend of mine, Frank, and he told me, he said, Clay, you got to learn how to get your head out of the fireplace. And now, being in the business of being masonry repair and stuff, I just realized he wasn't talking about anything other than really learning how to run the business, how to trust somebody by following orders and knowing how to follow up, give them the tools they need to do the job properly, then kind of really expect it to be done that way. But delegation isn't easy. Is there any key ideas that you think how to walk somebody into first learning how to delegate from a leader to actually become a delegator?
Well, it's really a matter of trust. Okay, so I ride motorcycles a lot, and I'm very into it, and I love hard cornering, laying the bike over in a curve. Well, to do that, you have to learn to trust your bike, and you have to learn to trust your tires, because otherwise you're never going to do it. And in a business situation, you have to learn to develop employees that you trust, and you have to allow them the leeway to make a mistake and use those mistakes not as a point of scolding them, but as a teaching moment. When somebody makes a mistake in a business and you're a true leader, you use it as a teaching moment.
Well, it's an interesting analogy about riding a bike, because when you think of it, that's really a serious issue. Learning how to really bank into that and trust those tires are going to hold where they're supposed to. That really is a great analogy. I never thought of it that way. And really, it is learning to trust employees. Too often we end up thinking, well, I've got to micromanage everything, and that's just not the way to run a business, or actually it will never grow, because it's only as high as the lid is. And if you're the lid and you stop delegating and expect things to be done, you're not going to grow your business.
That's true, Clay. That's very true.
Let's do this. Let's talk about team building. How do you take that leadership and that delegation, move it over to some team building ideas that you can learn to trust that guy? What are some team building exercises that you've found over the years, Greg, that might help us?
Well, one thing for sure is that trust that you show your employee by example should become the trust that they have in each other. And that's what makes a team. It's when I'm not just an individual that's part of this group that goes out and does this work. I'm part of a team. We support each other. We help each other. We guide each other. We have each other's back. And that comes, I think, mostly from the leader. The leader sets the example for that, and the others follow. And he also sets the expectation. So, there's no like magical things. I mean, I've heard of a lot of things people do. They go on hikes together and long camp outs and do some challenging outdoor stuff, and that helps build team. And it can help build trust, but I think most of it is going to come from the guy leading them.
Team building isn't an easy thing. I think it's a lot of times knowing about their families and really caring about them and letting the employee know that. And it's like when they pull in the driveway, you want them to really enjoy coming to your place. No, work is still work, but they don't have to hate the job. And really, if you kind of sense that in a company that they're not part of the team, it's really probably try to help them, guide them into a new position in the company, or try to help them find a new job, because the team has got to play together. If they're not marching down the field together, you got a problem with some values or some kind of leadership issue from your side, or their lack of accepting your leadership.
Yeah, it's true. And you know what? A great leader, a team will follow a great leader anywhere. And I'll give you an example. One of my favorite examples is Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee was probably the greatest general of the Civil War, maybe one of the greatest military minds in the history of the military of the United States. And there was no doubt, absolutely no doubt, that his troops would not just follow him, they absolutely revered him. And if he told them to march across a field that was being bombarded by cannons from above, and where the enemy was entrenched, and you were going to be in the open for a mile, they would have done it without flinching. And in fact, that was the definition of Pickett's charge at Gettysburg. That's exactly what they did. And to follow that kind of command means that the leader has already shown to his followers that he cares about them. He has their best interest at heart. It's not just words, it's reality. And they honor his intelligence and the direction that he can take the team. They honor that. They recognize that. And that is what's required if you want to have a team that'll do whatever you need.
Team building isn't an easy thing, and it's something I think you have to kind of walk into slowly as a new business owner. And it really comes down to jumping out on a truck maybe with them and trying to talk to them about how they do it, get their input, then celebrate it when they come up with a good idea. Because too often I think as leaders we think it's us when it's really their wrenches, they're turning the whatevers, trying to make things happen. And we kind of take, well, we got this job when really they're the one that did it. So that's building team leadership when you kind of celebrate what they've done for you as a company.
Absolutely. And you know what? More important to anyone that is working, more important than money, is how they're treated and how they're appreciated by the people they work for. Being appreciated, being valued is enormous to an employee's happiness.
Give me some demonstrations of that. Give me some examples that you've seen in the workplace, not just in a business or industry. How have you seen that played out some as far as celebrating or honoring somebody like that?
I think it is all about celebrating successes. And what you learn if you ever teach in middle school, or actually at any level, but let's say middle school because that's where you have more of the behavior issues to deal with, I think. And that is the success is in rewarding them for what you want them to do, not in punishing them for failing to do what you want them to do. So it's about rewarding them. It's about uplifting them. It's about encouraging them because everybody wants that. Nobody I know wants to be scolded. Everybody I know wants to be encouraged and praised for every small success because that makes them want more to succeed more. And I've seen businesses where I've heard guys say to me, I don't ever feel like whatever I do is appreciated, whatever it is, however well I think I've done. The response I get from the leader is, well, I would have done it this way, or did you think about trying this? So they feel like they don't even want to bring it up. They don't even want to talk about what's happened in the field because they never get support for it. And that's not a good situation.
That's really an insecure leader if you can't share the accomplishment with who really did the job. And I find that's really important. I see that all the time where it ends up being me, I did this, when it's really them. They're the one that came up with the idea. They're the one that stuck out late at night making things happen. And it's not you that just got the number. It's they brought that number to you. As far as training an employee, where do we go with that? We're going to jump back into sales in a minute, but I just want to talk about training employees first. Is there a method that you see that works pretty good?
Yeah, and the method is thoroughness. It isn't, training an employee is not just taking them out and showing them, having them shadow you a little bit and showing them what you do and saying this is how you do it. Training an employee begins the moment they arrive with your explaining to them what the company stands for, what your expectations are as a company, what the team is expecting, what the future looks like, and then going in detail to every single small thing you want that employee to do. Most often, an employee doesn't do what you want because you have not explained it clearly to him. That's the big failure.
I think knowing the expectations of anything is really important. What you expect it to be done for the day. If you put a mason crew out or a contracting construction crew, say, I want this wall up, or we need to have this floor finished up, or whatever it is, or this project installed by the end of the day, I think they kind of meander through life trying to think, well, what is good, what's acceptable? And I think you really make them muster up to it if they know what to expect or what you're expecting as a team leader. Because if you lay it down for them, a lot of times they'll rise to the challenge and make it happen.
Yes, especially if you've inspired them to do that. Rather than just say, I want you to do this and do it this way, or there's going to be trouble. It's, hey guys, this is how we do this. This is what makes our company exceptional. This is the kind of work we perform. So when we do this job, we do it this way, and this is what I'm looking for a result. Then everybody says, okay, I get it. I get that. But if you don't explain that, I often hear this. Well, I told them to do such and such, but they didn't do it. And my response is always the same. Well, they didn't hear you. You may think you've told them, but they didn't hear you because nobody doesn't want to do what the employer is asking of them. So it wasn't clear enough when you said this. And you have to confirm that. So you have to say, here's exactly what I want done step by step. Do you understand?
I want to ask you something. Let's unpack that a little bit because I want to know, you sit there and you tell them, you give them written directions, but I think what you're saying under that all, they're really not hearing you. What causes that disconnect?
What causes the disconnect is always it's always on the lap of the leader or the boss because he has made communication with them so confusing and difficult over time and so unrewarding that guess what? They stop listening. I had a friend when I was a kid. I grew up in a suburb of Boston that was highly Irish and Italian Catholic. And I had a friend named Anthony who was one of the nicest kids you'd ever know. Good student, well behaved, honorable young man. I never heard his mother once talk to him that she wasn't yelling at the top of her voice. And you could see that Anthony just had totally long ago tuned it out. He just tuned it out because it was meaningless to him. So we can do that with our employees. We can have them tune us out when what we say to them is confusing or appears to be negative, a put down, not enlightening in any way, and not inspiring. They will tune it out. And so you'll tell them things, you'll think that they heard it, and they didn't, because long ago they tuned you out.
You know, it's interesting, Greg. I run an operation here in Cincinnati, and I've always learned that don't make threats, make promises.
Right.
When I mean that, I don't go threaten you're going to lose your job or we're not going to use you on this job. You're going to probably have less hours. I make it a promise because I really mean it, because you make threats, you're not really scaring most contractors. They're not afraid.
No.
They can find another job before that. It's not impossible. So really, as a leader, you lose. But you got to make promises to the team that we're going to be doing this if we get this. And it really has helped me a lot as far as a leader to learn more about promising. If you don't do this, we've got to do that. Somebody's got to go back and pick up that mess. If you throw those cigarette butts out there, somebody's got to go back there, and it's not going to be me.
Right.
It's almost humiliating, sometimes just a simple little things on a job, but if you don't make promises to them, they're not hearing the conversation a lot of times.
Exactly. And you know what? When people say, well, I've asked my guys to do this, but they're just not doing it. And my response is, you know why they're not doing it? Because you haven't made it as important to them as it is to you. And that's the key.
Ooh, that's pretty serious stuff. You haven't made it as important to them as it is to you. Now, is that just more clarification or more inspections of the task at hand? What do you mean by that?
It is more clarification, but also if you go to somebody and say, we got to get this done by this time because I have this other kind of appointment going on and we must finish it. It's like they're thinking, well, I'm not going to rush through this because of some issue you have. There has to be some other, I have to have some reason to do this beyond the fact that you need it done at a certain time, especially if you don't have their full respect at this point. There has to be some value in it for them. And often, like, I'll hear guys say, well, I keep asking them to take these kinds of pictures from the job, and they do it a little bit, but then they fall back and they stop doing it, and then they do a little bit and they fall back. And I said, look, you haven't made it worth their while. One thing you could try just to set the standard, because what you want to do is have them develop this habit to say, every time that you do a job, when take the pictures I want taken, I will give you this bonus. And now there's something in it for them beyond you're just saying I want it done. Now there's a value associated with it. It doesn't have to be a big bonus. It doesn't even have to be money. But it has to be something that makes them say, wow, I really need to focus and pay attention because I want to get that. Mm-hmm. So I want to take these pictures every single time because that amounts to, at the end of the week, then I'll get this. Now, once that habit is established, and then the bonus doesn't have to be there anymore. Because it's like training a dog, and every time you teach a dog a new trick, you give him a treat. Well, after he learns the tricks and will respond to your command, you don't have to give him the treat anymore. It works anyway.
Interesting. Well, Home Contractors HQ listeners, I'm talking to Greg Polakow, and we're learning a little bit about leadership from a professional teacher here. Greg, I got a few more questions here for you. You ready for them?
I am.
Okay, I want to just talk about some goal setting and business planning. Let's talk about the idea as a manager. You have to have daily, weekly, and monthly and quarterly, I guess year's goal. How do you go about bringing that into importance to your employees, but also that you grow your business profitably?
Goal setting is like everything else to do in the business. They have to buy into all of it. They have to buy into the business itself. They have to buy into you as a leader. They have to buy into the value of what it means to them when the business does well. They have to buy into the idea that they've got a future here, that all of this is tied together in one big packet. Because your goal it's just like asking them to do something. Just because it's your goal doesn't automatically make it their goal. Even though they'll hear you and they'll nod their head, it'll just go in one ear and out the other. They have to see themselves as part of the bigger picture. They have to feel part of the team. They have to feel like they're a valued member of this business, or any goals you set are meaningless.
Wow. Now, as far as setting goals down, do you think that you should post them in the office on a wall so they know that we're trying to get something daily, weekly? And I think some people say, well, it should be an open book about the whole business. And I feel like sometimes when you tell them everything, they think, well, you made $5,000 on this job or grew the whole job. We made you $5,000, but they forget you had $2,000 material, you had $1,000 and whatever's, and they think I really made $5,000. I didn't. How do you put that on a board and communicate that with employees?
That's a good question, because that is the question, Clay. And the question can be resolved in a very simple way. You make the business as transparent as possible for your employees. That's how they feel part of it. They understand that when they do a job for X amount of dollars, what the costs are that are involved and how much that actually shows up as profit for you and goes into their paycheck and the overhead and all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. They have to understand that. And the only way to do that is share it with them. Why would that be behind closed doors? Anything that's hidden from employees, they become suspicious of.
Ooh. Sometimes I used to think, well, they really don't care. The more I share with them about the numbers of taxation, the cost of fuel, the cost of trucks, anything we have is overhead or health insurance or benefit programs, that I tried to explain that to them. I think I learned that years ago from my friend Jim Brewer down in Virginia Beach. And he's tried to explain to his employees every little nuance of the business, trying to make sure they're aware it's not just a $5,000 job. There's a lot of hidden costs. There's fixed overhead costs of secretaries, office, phone lines, computer services, a lot of things that new contractors just don't have any idea about.
That's exactly right. And if they seem disinterested, it's only because no one's ever made them interested. No one's ever given them a reason to be interested. They will treat it as a job as long as you treat them as just employees. They will treat it as a business that they're part of when you start treating them as your team. And when it comes to setting goals, I would very much include them in that process. And they have to say, okay, here's a goal setting. We're going to have a goal setting meeting. Let's talk about what we want to accomplish this week or this month or this quarter or whatever as a group.
Unpack that. How do you do that?
You have a meeting with them and you talk about it. You say, look, here are places I'd like to see the business go this week or this month. What do you guys think about that? And I want your honest opinion. I want your absolutely honest opinion so we can discuss it. And only when you mean that and allow them to express their views will you get that kind of feedback. When you get their feedback, it's going to make them buy into the process.
Very good. Let's close this out now, Greg. I want to thank you for your time, but I want to just talk about KPIs. What do you think about the key performance indicators that the employees should be aware of, like how many jobs we did this week, how many fell apart, what kind of gross numbers we brought in this week? Are there certain KPIs that you think that are important that everyone knows? And is there certain KPIs that, as an owner, we need to know about our businesses?
Yeah, of course. There are in both cases. And I think whatever KPIs there are, the employees need to know clearly that those are the key performance indicators. Clearly. Not vaguely hinted at, but they need to know, this is how I'm measuring this business. This is how we are going to measure this business. And if you have any thought about what other key performance indicators, I would like to hear it from you. Because when you give that kind of power to employees, they will surprise you. They will surprise you. They will come up with things you never thought of. But you have to get to that point where you trust them and listen to them.
Well, Greg, you've given us a lot of great insights here for the Business Building Series, and I really appreciate your time. Is there any final words that you want to shout out to our new home contractors out there that they should be looking for, even conquering fear if they want to start their business? Any insights that we can close out with, Greg?
Well, the two main ones we've touched upon already, but I want to say two things about them. One is the process of team building and the process of employee training never ends. There doesn't come a time when the employees are completely trained. There doesn't come a time when you can rest on your laurels about building a team any more than there comes a time in a marriage when you can just let it slide. It takes constant work, and especially training. There's always more to learn, and there's always more to repeat, and there's always more to reinforce. And that's an ongoing process.
It's interesting. You said that. I always laugh, and I always thought, here we are with great ball players, football players, basketball players. They're all taking practice. They're all taking shots. They're all taking hits. They're all doing something over and over. And they're so specific about they have to have a trainer for that specific task or skill set, be it a line coach or special teams or batting coach. It's interesting that even after all those years and rising to those levels, they still need to practice. They still need to make sure that swing, that move is proper so it doesn't get out of balance, does it?
Exactly. Let me make one more point. You got time for one more point?
I do for you, brother.
You know that I flew airplanes for years as part of my work at Copperfield.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're a pilot, you never stop practicing. you never stop practicing. You are always working at it because nobody wants to be a mediocre pilot. Nobody wants to be a mediocre motorcycle rider. And certainly nobody wants to be a mediocre contractor.
Good point. Greg, you've dropped some golden nuggets on it. Thank you so much for stopping by here at the Home Contractors Training Stage. And I will be posting this in a while, and it's been a little time, but thanks again for being my friend.